Hello. Hi everyone. Welcome. Thank you all so much for being here. Hopefully, can you all hear me? Do you want a whistle? Thank you very much. Awesome. There we go. Thank you all so much for being here. My name's Imi. I'm here from Emerge. I am the Darrant Valley project lead for the Emerge charity. We will tell you a little bit more about who we are and what we do. We've got a quick little video. Joy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Joy. I'm the founder and chief exec of Emerge, and we've just got a little video that we want to play for you just to tell you a little bit about what we do as a charity before we kind of move into the main thing that we'll be doing tonight, which is a sort of training workshop. Hopefully you've all come expecting training workshop around sort of self-harm and that type of thing for young people. Is that why you've come?
The Guardian newspaper
excellent. We're all in the right place then.
The numbers of young
We'll just watch the video and then we'll pick it up.
people seeking help from the NHS for mental health issues is relentless and unsustainable. Mental health charity Young Minds warns the record high number of children and young people receiving care from the NHS tells us that the crisis in young people's mental health is a wave that is breaking now. In the face of this heartbreaking situation, Emerge Advocacy's mission is to be a voice of hope.
I've been self-harming for a long time and it kind of escalated. The emergency services got quite familiar with me as I felt increasingly hopeless and went to great lengths to end my life. When I first met Emerge in hospital, they made such a difference. They were just genuinely nice people who cared about me even though I was a stranger and didn't even care about myself. Something about them being there with me made me feel calmer and safe. We chatted and played a random game.
Having the Emerge team in A&E really does make a big difference. You know, we're always so busy and we can't give these patients all the time and reassurance that we wish we could. It's brilliant when Emerge are with one of the patients because we know that that patient will be in a much better place to engage with their assessment and their treatment as a result. They become calmer and less stressed. They've been such an invaluable asset to A&E, they really have. They've helped us enormously. And not to mention the cakes they often bring in, which are lovely.
After I came out of hospital, they carried on checking in on me. We'd go for coffee, a walk, and it was just a space to chat about how things were going. I didn't find it easy to trust people and it was hard to work with mental health services, but it felt different with Emerge. They helped me stick with it and really get the support I needed from professionals.
It's just so amazing seeing the difference it makes to young people. You walk in and find them anxious, shut down, scared, and after an hour or so of chatting, playing a game or whatever, you start to see them start to come back to life right in front of you. Smiles, eye contact, and a spark of hope.
Emerge held on to hope for me when I couldn't. They have been the ultimate cheerleaders for my life. And without Emerge, I wouldn't be here today.
Let us help you be a voice of hope to young people in your local hospital, in your community. We're ready. We are doing this. Will you join us?
Cool. It's always a little bit cringe watching a video of myself, but you know, I hope that gave you a bit of a flavour about what Emerge as a charity does in hospital. And this training that we're doing this evening is really just born out of all of the hours that we have sat talking and listening with young people when they've been in crisis, and as we've been kind of walking that journey with them through it. So Emerge as a charity started in Guildford sort of 6.5 years ago, and since then we've spread out quite a bit across Surrey and now into Kent and in Berkshire as well. And Emmy's just going to tell you a little bit about what's happening locally.
Just put me on the spot. So we launched at Darrant Valley Hospital in May last year, and since then we've supported over 50 young people who've been into hospital because they've self-harmed, overdosed, or have been in emotional crisis, which is amazing. So we see young people in hospital at Darrant Valley, and then we offer them up to 3 months of support in the community as well, which is for me to do it is just a privilege to be able to sit there and listen, help them find coping strategies and ways out of their situation when perhaps they feel hopeless. So it really is an absolute privilege. I'm just going to do some housekeeping before I let you kind of get on with it. So I think I've heard there are loads more toasties, so if anybody wants seconds, please help yourself. I've been told to get them eaten, otherwise Vanda will be eating them for the next few days. They're over there in that corner, so please feel free to get up, help yourself. There might be drinks, I'm not sure, but please do drink those, eat those, and drink the drinks if there are drinks. If you need the loo at any point, it's just through that door at the side, and keep wandering, and hopefully you'll find them eventually. So feel free to go at any time. Do we need to do in case of a fire? There's an exit there. So... or if not, out that way, through that door and to the right. Lovely. Is there anything else? We will be talking about, mental health. If you need a break at any point, there is no judgment. Go and step outside, go to the loo, stand in the foyer, do whatever you need to do. We realise that this can be a really heavy topic and a really personal topic, actually, for a lot of us, ourselves included. And it is a personal topic, but Joy and I both have stories of things that give us hope. And that's why we do what we do, I think, is because we've seen hope, and we've seen in our own lives and in the lives of young people change happening, which is really exciting. So I hope this training will help you with the children, young people, adults that you might encounter. And we will be talking a lot using the language of self-harm, but it does apply, some of what we were saying does apply to other things, so feeling suicidal, low moods, overdoses, that sort of thing, it will apply as well. So I'm going to pass over to you, Joy.
Cool. Thank you, Emmy. So just a little bit about, I think we can kind of skip over this slide, actually, thank you, Vanda, because we've kind of explained it through, can you just go right back to the very beginning, actually, where it's got the structure? Or maybe I haven't got the structure, don't worry about that. This evening's going to be split into 3 main sections. We're going to think about what is going wrong for young people, what do young people need, and then what's the role of kind of supportive adults in their lives. And in order to do that, we're gonna start each section with a little snippet of a case study that's going to build as we kind of go through the evening, because we thought it's helpful just to really earth this with a young person's story. And this is a real young person. It'll be not their name and not their photo, but it's a real young person, actually, that Emmy has supported. So I know you've just sat down, Emmy, but if you can just come and give us the first bit of Grace's story, then that would be fantastic.
I'll have my steps in by the end of the night. So Grace, we'll go back to her picture. She was a young person who I met in hospital, and actually when I met her she had some really positive things going on for her. She'd been in recovery for an eating disorder, and was no longer kind of not eating food as a coping mechanism, which was just a fantastic starting point for her. But she found that she had a whole load of emotions going on that she didn't now know how to work through, how to channel, because she'd lost that kind of coping mechanism. So she went to hospital because she'd self-harmed and overdosed, and that was the point that I met Grace. So before I tell you more about her, I will pass back and we'll have a little bit of a chat.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so this is where we're kind of starting, really, with what's going wrong for young people. And in order to just unpack this, I'd like to talk just a little bit about the difference between mental health and well-being, because those are things that they're terms that we use quite interchangeably when we're talking about young people's mental health, when we're talking about self-harm. Just if you can just go to the next one. Perfect, that's great, thank you. So we've kind of got like two continuum lines here. We've got the mental health, mental illness along the horizontal, and then we've got well-being on the vertical. And so they're two quite distinct things, but they're terms that we tend to use interchangeably. So mental health and mental illness, if you think of that like in our physical bodies, we can be really well, we can be in great shape, we can work out regularly, we can eat well, we can take good care of our bodies, we can be blessed with good genetics, and our bodies can be in really great shape. Yeah, not just like, you get what I mean. We can be really healthy. On the other end of that, we can have physical illness, and mental health and mental illness is kind of, it's like that. It's like when you have an illness, it's something that it happens and you need treatment, and it tends to happen kind of like over a longer period of time, and you need to seek medical help for that. When we're talking about well-being, that is something that can change over the course of, within the course of a day. So our well-being is things like our mood, how tired we are, whether we've eaten, all of those kinds of things. If you're anything like me, you can kind of feel like you go up and down maybe on that well-being line. Quite a lot, getting a bit hangry, being tired, and being stressed out, those kinds of things are things that affect our well-being. And what I've noticed, what we notice in Emerge is that when we can help young people to keep their well-being high, to do those things that help them to be well in themselves, to be having kind of enough sleep, regular sleep, food, keeping their stress levels low, having kind of friends and community around them, all those kind of things, having a sense of purpose, then that really helps with their mental health. It helps to prevent them having kind of coming down this end where they might develop a mental illness. But the thing that's really cool about well-being as well is that we can have a good sense of well-being even if we do have a mental illness. So, and I think that sometimes when young people get diagnosed with something, it can feel like, oh my goodness, this now defines me. And they feel like they can't have a good quality of life. But actually, if they manage their mental illness well, I mean, if we help them to manage it well, then they can actually, their well-being levels can still be high. At the same time, if our well-being levels are low, we can feel like we're having a really bad time and maybe even believe that we have a mental illness. Like sometimes people go, oh, I'm so depressed. But it doesn't mean that they have depression. Do you see the difference? But sometimes we feel like that, and we can feel so hopeless when we're so tired and sort of strung out, but it's actually a well-being issue. It's not a mental health issue. And so in Emerge, what we try our best to do is to help young people and give them tools to really boost their well-being so that whether they have a mental illness or not, actually they can live the best life possible that they can, and that they can enjoy it, and that they can fulfill their potential. Okay, let's go on to the next little bit. So, when we are talking about young people's well-being, what are the kind of things that affect them? In Emerge, we sort of talk about this like young people experiencing storms in life. And these are just some words that would describe some of the things that constitute the storms of life for young people. You can see there we've got things like insecurity, rejection, guilt, bullying, stress, feeling down, anger, not feeling heard, having experienced traumatic things. All of these things are like storms that buffet our young people and make their experience, just make life difficult, make it hard to cope. And like a storm, when it's young people that we care for, we wish that we could take these things away, don't we? We wish that we could just cancel it all out. But we can't change the weather, and we can't always change the fact that young people experience these things. But what we can do is help them to cope better. So when you're in a storm, you'd look for shelter, don't you? You look for protection. And we like to use the umbrella metaphor for this. So when young people are experiencing the storms of life, as we call them, they reach for an umbrella like you would, that's going to help them, that's going to protect them from what's going on. But some of the time, what they reach for is stuff that's not healthy. It's not going to help them, and it's what we call our sort of self-harming umbrella. It's essentially negative coping strategies. And the other reason why we use the term umbrella is because there's a number of things that come into that kind of like negative coping strategy, sort of like umbrella term, if you see what I mean. And the first one of those, which I'm just going to chat to you about briefly, is to do with eating. Now, you might not necessarily think that eating is, or like issues with eating, you wouldn't necessarily class those as self-harm. But what I think we can agree on is that as people, our relationship with food is quite closely connected to our emotional life. Yeah? So for me, if I've had a really stressful day, or I'm just kind of like needing comfort, I'll just come home and eat all the crisps. Because, you know, who doesn't love a massive sharing packet of Doritos Cool Original and a cup of tea at the end of the day? Yeah? Or maybe in the middle of the day. Because you know it's bad for you, right? You know you shouldn't. You know that's a sharing pack. And you've eaten it all yourself. Yeah? But you do it because it makes you feel a bit better at the time. Yeah? And that is a really simple example of the function that self-harm fulfills in the life of young people when they're struggling with it. They know it's not a great idea. They know that it's bad for them, but they do it anyway because it helps them to feel a bit better. It helps them to cope with what they're experiencing. So, in terms of eating, it could be, like I've just described, kind of like overeating to the extreme. It could be restricting food. It could be over-exercising. Could be purging as well if they're kind of, having a whole mixture of things going on. And that is very much intertwined with what's going on in life, how they're experiencing the storms that are coming at them. And it's their umbrella. It's the thing that they're like, I need this. I need this to cope. If I don't have this, then I've just got no protection in the storm. It's just all going to come at me. It's the thing that helps them get through. If you can just go back. No, we're good. Yeah. Go to the one you're on. Thank you. The next set of things is around risky behaviour. And again, it might not be the first thing that comes to mind. But when young people are struggling and they're going through these storms, they do things that are not so advisable. And I've got just a couple of different examples. So something that we see quite a bit when we're doing emerge stuff at the hospital is young people that are brought in because they've put themselves into a physically dangerous situation. So maybe I'm just going to walk along the top of this really high thing just to see what will happen and for the sheer hell of it. And it's not necessarily that they even wanted to jump off the really high thing or along the side of the dual carriageway or whatever it was. It was just because they were feeling very, I don't know what, and they just found themselves there and they just took themselves there and they just did this because it kind of mirrors how they're feeling on the inside. It gives some expression to what's going on and maybe a bit of a release. And we'll talk a little bit more in a little while about why these things help. But for now, let's just talk about what they are. We've also got getting into fights. This could be verbal, it could be physical altercations. And it's not always about the fact that they've really got a beef with the person who they're having the argument with. It's sometimes just because they've got all of this pent-up emotion and it just has to come out. And I think we can all probably relate to that as well. Maybe sometimes a bit of road rage after a stressful day at work, that type of thing. Of course, I would never, but some people might. We've also got kind of taking risks, risky behaviour with drugs and alcohol. By this, I'm not talking about just kind of going off and having a great time and maybe sort of overindulging, but it's when it gets to the point of self-medicating. It's escape. It's I need this because I need it helps me get through. It helps me cope with what's going on. We've got taking risks with our hearts, with our emotions, in relationships. So again, I know that, the young person might think, I know that this situation is risky or this relationship is maybe not good for me, but I'm just going to do it anyway because it makes me feel less alone, it makes me feel special, it makes me feel loved, it takes my mind off what else is going on, it gives me somewhere else to be, maybe if home's tricky. There's all different reasons why young people will take risks with their hearts when they're really struggling and they're really going through stuff in life. And then the last little one on this is taking risks online. We could do a whole other session on that. So I'll just put it out there for now. But just talk with young people about what they're doing online. What does that mean to them? How is that kind of relating to their emotional life? What impact does it have? Are there particular things that they do, like different apps they use, that they find particularly helpful or that they find actually detrimental? Because definitely it'll figure. Okay, the next little section is self-injury, which is probably the thing that you think of when we say the word self-harm. So self-injury can take all sorts of different forms. I think the thing that people most commonly think about is maybe kind of teenage girls who cut their arms with razor blades. And certainly that does happen. But actually there's lots of other ways, and young people often, I think we think that maybe when young people do this that they can be a bit like, look what I did. But actually the majority of young people that we see don't want anyone to know, don't want you to see it, they don't want to talk about it, and they'll do it in ways and in places where it's not obvious. And when they get to the point where somebody knows about it, or it's been discovered, it's been found out, that's basically like just adding to their storm because they're like, oh my goodness, this really private thing, now somebody else knows about it and I have to talk about it, and are they going to tell my parents? And it's all so stressful. So although I think sometimes in the media it can be portrayed as a bit of an attention-seeking thing, in our experience, we'll talk about attention-seeking in a minute, but in our experience it's usually quite a private, personal thing. We've also got self-injury by kind of like maybe punching walls, sometimes headbutting, maybe bashing into furniture, things like that, which sometimes it can be sort of discovered by the young person accidentally, that they might have had an accidental injury, and then they realise that, this kind of helped me in some way, maybe because of the attention that they got in getting it cleaned up, or, different things, different ways. Other things, burning, hair pulling, picking, kind of like compulsive picking, that type of thing. A lot to do with anxiety, those things. So it might be kind of like you didn't even realise they're doing it, like picking nails down and that type of thing. Okay, and finally, we've got self-poisoning. So this is something that we see a lot with Emerge. Well over half of the young people that we support right across all of our projects, they're in hospital because of an overdose. So it can be over-the-counter painkillers, that type of thing, paracetamol, ibuprofen. It can also be just medicine that they find lying around at home, like their parents' medicine or other medicine that's lying around at home. So you know how on like medicine boxes it always says like keep out of the sight and reach of young children? Basically, I'd just like to change that and just say just keep out of the sight and reach of everybody, especially teenagers, because teenagers are impulsive creatures, aren't they? So what we have in our house is we have a lockbox under our sink that's got a combination code. So me and my husband, when we need to get any medicine out of there, we don't have to go searching for the key. Where's the key? It's just a combination code. It's really, it's so convenient, but it just means that all our medicines are just in a safe place. And I think it really helps if young people are vulnerable, because if there's pills lying around, or if they know, they're in mum's bedside cabinet or whatever, if they're feeling particularly vulnerable and they know they can just go and get them, then they're likely to do that, aren't they? But if they're locked away, then it gives them time to kind of go, maybe maybe I need to do something else, or maybe it just gives time for those feelings to subside a little bit, or for whoever's in the house with them to realise that maybe they're not okay, because they can't just act on that impulse straight away because you've kind of put a block in there because they couldn't just access the medicine. So yeah, just keeping it out of the way is really helpful. And then self-poisoning also, again, drugs, alcohol and the like, and then poisonous substances. So sometimes we have young people that are in hospital because they've ingested something that is going to hurt them. It could be batteries, it could be blades, it could be kind of, you know, cleaning chemicals, that kind of thing, which is obviously, you know, with all of these things, they're in A&E, and that's where they need to be if they've done those things. So again, it's just about knowing when, if you're supporting young people for who are vulnerable, it's knowing what their risks are and how to try and keep them as safe as possible. And so when mental health services talk with parents and when young people are going home from hospital, they will talk with them about putting these things again out of reach and locking them away. Okay, so this is our not very nice coping strategy umbrella, negative coping strategy umbrella. Have you ever been caught in a downpour? Maybe you've been shopping in town, maybe you've been on the school run, and suddenly the heavens open and it starts chucking it down. You're going, oh, where's my umbrella, where's my umbrella? And you get it out your bag or, you know, from wherever it is, and you put it up and you're like hunkered down under this umbrella. And you're like, oh, thank goodness I remembered to put this in, and the rain's like crashing down on it. And there's always that really annoying thing, isn't it, when you've got the umbrella and like the bottoms of your legs still get wet as you're walking because you can't take small enough steps to like not get wet. And then somebody comes to you and goes, hey, what are you doing with that umbrella? You shouldn't be using that umbrella, and tries to take it away from you. What would you think if someone did that? You'd be like, get off. I need this. Don't take this away from me. If you take this away from me, I'm going to get soaking wet. What are you playing at? Yeah? When we say to young people, you need to stop self-harming, we're trying to pull away their umbrella when they're in the middle of downpour. And they go, oi! Or they go, yeah? It doesn't go well. And you can understand why it doesn't go well, because like when we're like battling our way up the high street or on the school run or whatever it is in a downpour, clutching our umbrella, we're hanging on to it for dear life, aren't we? Sometimes, especially if it's a bit windy. And that's what young people are doing. That's what these negative coping strategies are for young people when they're being buffeted by all of these storms. And so if we come along and go, well, you shouldn't be doing that, you know that's bad for you, don't you? Look how much worry that's causing your mum, you know, or like whatever it is. It's just going to fall on deaf ears. What we need to do is give them something else. Yeah? We need to go, let me give you a better umbrella. Let's help. Let's find something else that's going to work better for you than what it is that you're doing at the moment. And that's kind of really what the basis of this training is. It's going, right, okay, these things, we know that they're not good, but we know that young people do them, and we understand why, but let's find a better way. Let's help them to find a better way. Before we move on to talk about that, I just want to say a word about attention seeking, right? So if we can reframe it as attention needing, it makes things a whole lot better. Let me explain why. When we in Emerge, when we kind of sometimes talk to nurses or we talk to teachers or parents or different people, sometimes, and I'm sure none of you would ever do this, they roll their eyes and they put their hand on their hip and they go, it's all just attention-seeking behaviour. There's not really I don't even know what her problem is. There's not really, she's got such a lovely family. Don't know why she's doing this. It's all purely attention-seeking, right? And I can understand, because sometimes it does feel like that, because you think, why? But let's ask ourselves this question: if there was really nothing wrong, why would they do this? Why would somebody do these things if there was no problem in their life? Of course there's something wrong, because if there was nothing wrong, they'd just get on and enjoy their life, wouldn't they? Wouldn't you? I would. So, if we can reframe when we have that thing that rises up in us, or when we have a conversation, go, attention seeking. If we can reframe it as attention needing, we can go, okay, what is the real need that they need me to pay attention to? How can I pay attention to what's going on in the way that they need me to? That's not just reacting to this behaviour, but that's going, what's going on underneath this? What is it that you really need? How can I help? How can I help? What can we do? Yeah? So that we're not just we don't just write it off, but we go, you know what? I see that there is a need. There clearly is a need, but what is it? And how can I pay attention to it in the right way? Why don't they just stop self-harming? So we've talked about this umbrella analogy. The reason why it's so hard for young people to just give away their umbrella is because these self-harming behaviours, they form an addictive cycle. It's like any addiction, that you have to go a little bit further and a little bit more each time in order to get the same benefit. So let's just go through this. So we start off at the top. The young person is feeling bad. And when those bad feelings build up, they get overwhelmed, and then they self-harm, and then they feel a little bit better, and then their mood dips, and then they start again. So, why do they feel a little bit better? It's interesting, isn't it? Why would doing something that hurts you make you feel better? There's a few reasons for this. It can be because it distracts them from what's going on, or from what they're thinking or feeling that's really distressing, or they might be experiencing what we call intrusive thoughts, which is where it's kind of like you've just got thoughts that keep on coming into your mind and you don't really like them, but they just won't stop, and you're like, I don't know how to make these horrible thoughts stop or these horrible feelings stop. But the act of the self-harm actually sometimes cuts through that, and it can help a young person come into a space where they do get a bit of space from those intrusive thoughts or those horrible feelings. It can also be that young people sometimes feel really numb, so kind of like on the opposite end of that, not feeling anything at all, and sometimes the self-harm kind of helps them to, like, reminds them that they're still alive, or helps them to feel something, because it's better than that numb feeling. Also, most of the behaviours that we've talked about, when young people do them, it gives them a bit of an adrenaline rush and some kind of happy hormones that gives them a boost as well. So, but the trouble with those things is that it's all short-lived, you know, whether it's distraction, whether it's feeling something, whether it's the kind of adrenaline rush, it's all short-lived. And so young people go round and round this cycle. So, but the good news is that we can break in, and so that's what these kind of yellow wedges are about. So in between feeling bad and things building up to the point of overwhelm, what we need and what young people need is supportive relationship, yeah? I'm sure we've probably all had that experience where we're having a bad time, we're feeling really weighed down by something or really upset about something, and we feel like we might get overwhelmed by it, and then somebody helps us, yeah? Somebody comes alongside, somebody listens, somebody gives us a hug, somebody helps us to feel like we're not alone. Yeah, maybe we talk it through, maybe we don't talk it through, maybe it's just enough to know that somebody else knows. But it stops us from feeling overwhelmed. Does that make sense? So that's why the relationships that you guys have with young people and the supportive, helpful relationships that young people have are so key and can help break that cycle before it even really starts to gather any momentum. Just that young people know that they're not alone and they've got somebody who's going to be there with them. In between, where we talk about getting overwhelmed and then actually self-harming, what the young person needs is positive outlets. So they've got all of this pent-up emotion, they've got all this stuff going on, and rather than using their negative coping strategy, they need a kind of positive outlet, and we're going to talk later on about what those can be. If they do self-harm, they're going to feel a little bit better, but as we've said, it's short-lived and their mood can dip. And so what we need to try and minimise that dip, because that just kind of helps to send them back around the cycle again. For some young people, their mood can really dip because they feel bad about what they've done. It could be like they feel guilty because they think it was wrong. They might believe that they've let other people down. They might see the distress it's caused other people if other people know about it, and they might feel bad about it for those reasons. They might just feel like they've gone back to square one if they've been struggling with self-harm for a while, and they've managed to not do it for maybe a day or a few days or maybe a few weeks or a few months, and then they might be really, really frustrated with themselves that they did it again, because they were like, oh, but I'd lasted for 6 days, and now, and you kind of have to go, it's all right. I often talk to young people about it being like, say you're running a marathon, and you're at, I don't know, mile 3 or whatever, and you fall down. It's not like you've gone back to the starting line. You've just fallen down where you are, and you just need to get up and carry on. So it's about kind of knowing, you haven't gone back to square one. This is just a blip, and it's okay. And it's about also, I've put there, no recriminations. Because sometimes, we can be frustrated on their behalf as well, or even maybe cross with them because of what they've done. But it's about kind of, we need to process that and deal with that ourselves. But for the young person, we just kind of need to reassure them that we haven't given up on them. We're not disappointed in them. We're still there for them. We're not writing them off. Actually, we've got hope for them, and we're going to stick with them. And then finally, in between the kind of mood dipping and starting to feel really bad again, we need to help young people to reconnect with a sense of purpose and to be able to problem solve some of these things. So it's not us telling them what they need to do, but it's helping them to feel less stuck in this process by going, okay, what could happen differently next time? What would help? If you were in this situation again, what could you do differently? What could I do differently? What could help? And it's also the thing about purpose. Sometimes, depending on the young person, they maybe need a short term, in the next 20 minutes, in the next hour, what are you going to do with yourself? You're going to I don't know, play a game on your phone, watch something on TV, go for a walk, stroke your dog. What are you going to do for the rest of the, in the short term or for the rest of the day, just to kind of get you through this moment. For some young people, they need a sense of purpose which is much more long-ranging than that. So it's kind of like, what are you aiming for? What are your aspirations in life? Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Could you imagine yourself in 5 years' time? How old are you going to be then? Do you want to go travelling? Do you want to go to uni? Do you want to get a certain job? What do you hope for? Because for some young people, they live with really, really hard situations which aren't going to change in the short term. And sometimes they just need that thing. It's sometimes like a tractor beam, sort of Star Trek reference, pulling them on, and they're kind of like, I know this is all crap. I know this is crap what I'm dealing with at the moment, but I'm aiming for that in, 2 years' time or 5 years' time or 10 years' time, that's where I'm heading. And it helps them to have that sense of hope. But they're like, yeah, I'm keeping my eyes fixed on that, that's where I'm going. Other young people, they can't even think about next week, let alone next year. And if you try and talk to them about where do you want